Hello friends, welcome to this session of research methodology. In this session, we are going to discuss experiments, and this is part 2 of discussion on experiment. Before starting further discussion on experiments, we will recap the first session. In first session, we got introduced to the concept of experiment, then we studied many definitions of experiment. Definitions provide framework to study the concept in detail. And then we studied significance of experiments. Significance study is very important because learning is energy intensive process and we need to understand significance in order to uh, get ready to invest our time and energy in the learning process. Then concept of controls we have studied. Controls are the variable which need to be controlled to focus on the effect of the variable which we want to study. If we don't control the other variables, the variables which are not focused by us, then those variables will cause the effect, and effect caused by our variable under study will get blurred. Then experiment in context of scientific method we have studied why experiments are required to understand something according to scientific method. We studied that. Then confounding variable we studied that concept. Confounding variable are the variables which are not in the control of experimenter, but those variables will have bearing on the results. If we don't tackle those variables, we don't treat those variables properly, then our results will not be reliable. We'll start our second session on experiment, and we'll start with experiment in engineering and physical sciences. These sciences are very different than biological sciences. In engineering and the physical sciences, experiments are a primary component of the scientific method. Observation and other methods are used there, but those are not main focus. Main focus is on experiments. They change some variables and try to study the effect of those variables. They are used to test theories and hypotheses about how physical processes work under particular conditions. Example, whether a particular engineering process can produce a desired chemical compound or not. Particular engineering process have different variables which will be controlled, and effect of those variables will be studied on the outcome. Then typically, experiments in these fields focus on replication of identical procedures in hope of producing identical results in each replication. Replications are necessary because some errors may occur during conducting the experiments. If we do the replications, then the in one replication that particular error will not occur. In other experiment that different error may occur, and if you replicate many times, then all those errors will get nullified. Therefore, replications are very necessary, and replications are strictly followed in engineering and physical sciences. Then, random assignment is uncommon because in uh, engineering and physical sciences, the experimental subjects which are inanimate, which are non-living, are fairly similar all over. There will not be variations much in those. Therefore, random assignment is not required. Random assignment is required whenever there is difference, there is variation in the experimental subjects. But in chemical and physical sciences, those variations are not common. And uh, in experiments in biological sciences, we are studying here medical science. In biological sciences, experimental research varies widely across subdisciplines. Many subdisciplines are there. Medical sciences are there, microbiological sciences are there, plant sciences are there, then animal sciences are there, agricultural sciences are there. Everywhere, style of experiment changes because experimental subjects are different, and very peculiar specificities are there with each type of experimental subject. Animals are different, plants are different, then microorganisms are different. In medical sciences, we treat humans. In veterinary sciences, again, we treat animals. All where some specifications differences are there. Experiments typically follow the form of the clinical trial in medical sciences. In clinical trials, uh, we tend to divide the volunteers or experimental subjects into different groups, and we treat each group with a different treatment. Where experimental units, usually individual human beings, are randomly assigned to a treatment or control condition. Random assignment is the base of experiments in medical science or clinical trials. Randomization is very essential to provide reliability of experimental results. If you fail to produce randomization, then you have to mention that there. Then it will be understood that your results cannot be extrapolated to for the larger population. And one or more outcomes are assessed. We can observe one outcome, just like we can provide a drug to improve height, then control will not get that drug, experiment will get that drug, and we will measure the height. Sometimes that particular drug may be a tonic, oral tonic, which will affect overall growth. We can measure height, we can measure weight, we can measure intelligence, we can measure other things also. Okay, one or more outcomes are assessed in experiments in medical science. Then here the focus is typically on the average treatment effect over the population or the samples selected. The difference in outcomes between the treatment and control groups or another test statistic produced by the experiment, that average effect or average test statistic is used there. A single study typically does not involve replication. If single study is there, then replications may not be required. But separate studies may be aggregated through systematic reviews or meta-analysis. That experiment can be spread over many different studies, can be carried out at many different places, can be carried out at many different experimental centers, and all those studies can be aggregated together through the process of systematic review or through the process of meta-analysis. That whole particular experiment may spread over different times also. Very large time period may be there. All those experiments carried out at different times will be aggregated by using systematic review or meta-analysis. Then another field is agricultural research. There are various differences in experimental practice in each of these branches of sciences. In agricultural research, randomized experiments are frequent. Randomization is very necessary in agricultural sciences because if we consider the soil also, in a field, in a same field, at different locations, soil quality changes, soil parameters changes, chemical composition changes. Plants have genetic differences in their seeds. If we produce hybrid plants also, in hybrid plants or tissue culture plants, clonally propagated plants, we expect those to be exactly similar to each other, but sometimes somaclonal variations are there. Okay. And then because of that, agricultural research tackle that variation using randomization. Randomization is the basis of clinical sciences as well as agricultural sciences, and in fact, it's a basis for all the experiments in biological sciences. Then we're there now towards the history of experimental research. For biological microbiology research, we'll go further. Okay. We'll discuss it later on. History of experimental research is very necessary to understand because that will provide us insight about the actual philosophy of experiments. One of the first methodological approach to experiments in the modern sense is visible in the works of Arab mathematician and scholar Ibn al-Haytham. We have to accept that most of the experimentation is developed, philosophy of experimentation is developed by mathematicians and statisticians, because in mathematics, in statistics also, a particular stepwise logic is there, or inductive logic is there, sometimes deductive logic is also there. They can collect the facts together to synthesize those into a knowledge, or they can break down a concept into its different part and we'll try to understand each part separately, and then we'll synthesize the knowledge later on. Okay. Ibn al-Hayat conducted his experiments in the field of optics, going back to optical and mathematical problems in the works of Ptolemy. Ptolemy's work he used as basic, Ibn al-Hayat, and by controlling his experiments due to factors such as self-criticality, reliance on visible results of the experiments, as well as a criticality in terms of earlier results. Okay. He didn't rely on feeling, on emotions, his emotions. He asked that the particular result, if he is expecting a particular outcome, that outcome shall be exactly visible to him. And he was self-critical. He was critical on himself, that whether I did something wrong, whether I measured something wrong, whether my measurements are not proper. He continuously asked himself the question whether his own method is reliable or not. He was the first scholars to use an inductive experimental method for achieving results. Ibn al-Hayat is the first one to use inductive experimental method. One by one conclusion of experiment was responsible for second experiment, second conclusion was responsible for third experiment, and so on. He went on to get the thorough knowledge about the particular concept or about the behavior of light. Then, in his book Optics, Ibn al-Hayat describes the fundamentally new approach to knowledge and research in an experimental sense. That was very new thing that provided reliability to the conclusions carried out by a person, or the uh, particular statement made by a person. What he said, we should recommence the inquiry into its principle and premises, beginning our investigation with an inspection of the things that exist and a survey of the conditions of visible objects. That is like literature survey. You should first know what is there, and then only you can ask the question, what will happen if I change this thing? What will happen if I do this thing? What will happen if something happens accidentally, or if something I carry out deliberately? Then we should distinguish the properties of a particulars and gather by induction what pertains to the eye when vision takes place, and what is found in the manner of sensation to be uniform, unchanging, manifest, and not subject to doubt. Okay. Here also the element of criticality is there. He asks the person to ask questions to himself, ask questions about his senses also, about the actual conditions during the experimentation, and there shall not be any doubt. There shall not be any vagueness in the things, or in the status of the things which is being stated. After which we should ascend in our inquiry, then only our inquiry should start. The second point says about the experimentation, protocol of the experimentation, and in third he say that then only when we decide the actual experimental process, then only we should start our inquiry, and then only we will start our reasoning gradually and orderly. Follow proper method for that, proper sequences of steps or procedures, criticizing premises, criticizing the conditions surrounding, criticizing the assumptions done, those are necessary, and exercising caution in regard to conclusions. Every vague conclusion shall not be there. All the conclusions should be based on the experiment, on the facts, and aim should be that we make aim should be that we make subject to inspection and review being to employ justice, not to follow prejudice, and to take care of the questions asked by others. Okay. Here also he is open to scrutiny by other people. He has transparently put forth his methods, put forth his results, put forth his conclusions, and ask the people to critically review those, to critically ask those, to doubt his to results, to doubt his conclusions, to doubt his methods also. And that doubt is very essential for reliability. We may, in this way, eventually come to the truth that gratifies the heart, and gradually and carefully reach the end at which certainty appears. That vagueness shall not be there. If the statement is there, that statement shall be concrete and shall be very reliable. While criticism and caution, we may say the truth that dispels disagreement and resolves doubtful matters. Disagreement will get dispelled, disagreement will not be there, because everything is criticized and properly scrutinized, and caution was exercised while concluding the things. Okay, therefore we will get the truth which will be beyond disagreement and which will be beyond doubts. For all that, we are not free from that human turbidity which is in the nature of man, but still questions will be there, but we must do our best with what we possess of human power. Okay, we must provide everything to be certain about reliability or about truth in the statement done, and that is the power which we derive from God. We derive support in all things. Okay. Then another takeaway from Ibn al-Hayat is, according to his explanation, a strictly controlled text execution with a sensibility for the subjectivity, not and susceptibility of outcomes due to the nature of man is necessary. Subjectivity and susceptibility of outcome is there. Okay, objectivity shall be there, but ideally objectivity is possible. Practically, it's not possible. Therefore, we should be sensible about subjectivity and susceptibility of the outcomes due to the doubtful nature of the human, or erring nature of the human. Okay. Each time a human shall understand his own limitations, and within his limitations he should state his conclusions. Furthermore, a critical view on the results and outcomes of earlier scholars is also necessary. You have to verify each and every fact which is known to you. which is known to you because of experiments carried out earlier also. You have to be critical about those, and you have to view your experiments also, your results also, in the critical light of earlier work done. Then it is thus the duty of the man who studies the writings of the scientist, it is the duty of the reader, it is the duty of the audience of the research, if learning the truth is his goal, to make himself an enemy of all that he reads, and applying his mind to the core and margins of its content, attack it from every side. Therefore, a reader shall try to verify all the conclusions or all the processes used to draw conclusions by the researcher. Everything he reads, audience shall criticize that, audience shall ask critical questions about that, shall not be shy of asking questions to his superiors or seniors. In science, nobody is senior, nobody is superior, everybody is peer. You have every right, whether you are qualified or not qualified to ask the question, you are free. You should ask the question so that your questions will bring the truth. He should also suspect himself self-criticality as he performs his critical examination of it, so that he may avoid falling into either prejudice or leniency. Prejudice shall not be there, or leniency shall not be there. You may criticize your guide also. You may ask question to your research guide also. You should not feel shy. You should not feel overwhelmed by authority of the scientist or authority of the author of particular article or authority uh, who is stating something. You should not feel overwhelmed. You should be free to ask the questions. Another takeaway is thus a comparison of earlier results with the experimental results which are obtained is necessary for an objective experiment. The visible research being results being more important. The result shall be clear in front of every audience. In the end, this may mean that an experimental researcher must find enough courage to discard traditional opinions or results. Traditional opinions may be held true, may be defended by religions, may be defended by extreme opinions. But researcher must have the courage to doubt those, to dispel those, and to refute those. Refute the traditional opinions and results, especially if these results are not experimental but results from a logical or mental derivation. If experimental results are there, then he should verify the experimental procedure. If experimental procedures are not there, or logical deduction is there, or mental derivation is there, he should have courage to discard the traditional opinions made by authorities also. In this process of critical consideration, the man himself should not forget that he tends to subjective opinions through prejudices and leniency, and thus has to be critical about his own way of building the hypothesis. The person shall be self critical about his own work also, shall doubt his own work also, and shall accept criticism made by others about his work also. He should not feel insulted or bullied by the critics, by the experts in that field, or by the non-experts in that field also. He should be open to all the criticism done by audience of his research. Okay. And we'll go towards the other history also. Francis Bacon is there. Uh, Francis Bacon is also a stalwart in this field, in the research field, and he was an English philosopher and scientist active in the 17th century, became an influential supporter of experimental science in the English Renaissance. And you should, I recommend you to read about Renaissance, because Renaissance is the reason for the world which we see now, for the state of the world which is there now. Okay. Renaissance is responsible for overall change in our view towards the knowledge. Okay. And Bacon disagreed with method of answering scientific questions by deduction, similar to Ibn al-Hayat, and described it as follows. Having first determined the question according to his will, man then resorts to experience, and bending her to conformity with his precepts, leads her about like a captive in a procession. Okay. If you are prejudiced, if you are uh, believing the deduced logic or deduced philosophy, philosophy which is derived by your brain, by just by mentally thinking, uh, Bacon disagrees with that. Bacon says that you will become captive if you believe which is already done. You should verify that and then only believe that. And according to me, this is something like Buddha. Buddha also asked you not to believe the things. Bacon wanted a method that relied on repeatable observation or experiments. Notably, he first ordered the scientific method as we understand it today. Bacon is responsible for the repetition, replications, and all those concepts in the experiment. There remains simple experiments, which, if taken as it comes, is called accident. If sought for, experiment. If you see something or if you observe something without doing yourself anything, then it can be called as accident or it can be called as serendipity, like that observation of lysosome, not lysosome, observation of lysozyme, and observation of antibiosis by penicillin. Those are accidents. Those are not sought for. If you deliberately do the thing, you deliberately try to change the conditions, then only it can be called as experiment that put forth by the Francis Bacon. The true method of experience first lights the candle, that is hypothesis. Based on previous observations, hypothesis shall be there, and then by means of candle shows the way. If you light the candle, then you will see the things clearly. Here arranges and delimits the experiment. The deficiencies and limitations you have to state, commencing as it does with the experience duly ordered and digested, not bungling or erratic, and from it deducing axioms. Do the experiment, understand the things, find out the measure the outcomes, and then deduce the theories. From that, go towards the theories. Theories also are not foolproof. Theories are also put forth to the further experimentation, further criticism, and from those further experiments, theories will get established. If not, then we need to modify the theories, and from established axioms, again, new experiments will be there. One experiment will be carried out based on previous observations, hypothesis, and based on conclusion of the previous experiment, next experiment will be carried out, and sequence will go on. That's the process provided to us by Francis Bacon. Now we are there towards the experiment in biological sciences, but we will not make this video too lengthy. We'll go for the third session also. In the third session, we'll discuss about further things in experiments. Okay, and later on, after this third session, we will start with the design of experiments. Thank you for watching the video. If you have liked this video, please press the like button. If you haven't subscribed it yet, then subscribe to my channel and share this video with your friends. Thank you.